Hey, Ken, how are you tonight?
Dan, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
We are going to be talking about overcoming significant challenges in your life. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
So, this topic is something that off camera, without recording, we have been talking about some of our friends and family going through significant challenges. And the one significant challenge that immediately pops up in my mind is, I'll say, loss of a relationship. And we are filming this, recording this around the holidays. And there's this thing known as the holiday feels, where people start to remember that if they've lost a significant relationship, they start to feel more alone than ever before, right? So if you've lost a significant relationship or you've had a significant challenge, like you've lost a job, maybe you've had for a while, and now you're in a position where you're facing this and you're not exactly sure what the best way to face it is, that's what I want to talk about here tonight. So, Ken, why don't you kick us off and give us your 2 cents on this topic?
It's an interesting comment about the holiday feels, right? Because there's something that happens at the holidays. And we've talked before about what happens with attaching significance and attaching meaning to dates or times of year. I think there's something that happens at the holidays, though, that puts people in a particular mindset. And that is that oftentimes, for the first time during the year, people slow down. People actually have a chance to be quiet, like their mind quiets down. They have a chance to reflect. You think about how busy most of us are during the year, that weird equation where we think busy equals productive, and that the faster we go and the more that we do somehow equates to growth and development. Well, Christmas comes along, the Christmas holidays come along, and most businesses shut down at least for a couple days. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. There's just a general quietness. It seems to be happening, traffic lessens, and all of a sudden you're left alone with your thoughts. And you start to reflect on what was. And in that reflection, there are comparisons to the way, quote, it should have been. And I think there's a real danger in that for people as they start to reflect on their life, particularly if they're going through a significant change, and particularly one around relationship. Dan, what do you think about that?
An idle mind is the devil's playground. I like to remind my coaching clients about that when they're in their sport. I work with a lot of athletes and they're just sitting in the dugout, let's say in baseball, and they're thinking about their last at bats or thinking about the last game, but they have to go out there and perform. And so if you're left to your own thoughts, we have this caveman brain, which is built to protect us from threats. And the biggest threat in today's world is actually other people's judgments. So, this holiday feel thing that aligns with this is the fact that we're in the holidays right now, and that, like you said, people are getting off work or they're reminded by the holiday what it used to be. And now they're stuck with this caveman brain, which is trying to protect them and is trying to protect them against other people's judgments. So I think probably where it starts for most people is the biggest challenge with a significant change, whether it's loss of relationship or loss of job, is the concern over other people's judgments about what just happened to them. So they've attached so much significance or identity to the fact that they're known to be this person with this job or this career. Maybe they're impressed, or they think other people are impressed because they've had that job for so long. Maybe they were so happy always going to the parties and being around people and being with that significant other. And now that's gone. So the first thing that I think our idle minds, this space to have to think and reflect on what just happened, is we are first and mostly, I think, realizing that other people we feel are judging us, and they are judging us for the loss that we just had. We're no longer with that person, that we're no longer in that job. And that's the first thing that they have to face.
So I agree with you. I think it is other people's judgments, but I'll go a step further. It's our perception of what we think other people's judgments are, that we're actually imposing other people's feelings on ourselves, whether or not those are accurate. And I recall this, we were watching the Hallmark Channel the other night, and some nondescript feel-good Christmas movie, where it's just all perfect. The people are perfect. Everyone is beautiful. The town is perfect. It snows on Christmas Eve. You know, there's a horse-drawn carriage. There's no graffiti. There's no poverty. There's no anything. It's like the most idealized Christmas you could ever have. And when you think about how Christmas is portrayed commercially, particularly in the US, it is that idealized image. There's a car waiting in the driveway with a giant bow on it. There's family gathered that laughing and having fun, you know, and steaming bowls of food coming out of the oven. There's all these stylized, idealized descriptors of the way that Christmas should be. Here's how it should be. And they're constant reminders to us, if we've suffered a loss, of how Christmas isn't. I don't have a job, so I can't buy the gifts. My wife or my husband left me, so I'm going to have to split time with the kids so that they can be at different homes. And all of that stuff coming together at that holiday time when it's super quiet. And like you said, we're in this space of survival. All of that coming together just plays to our disadvantage. And you really have to make an effort to move yourself out of that space and into a place that be healthy for you.
So I believe that all negative emotions come from expectations not being met. And so I see a significant change in your life as an opportunity, but it starts with resetting our expectations because we tend to rest on predictability, on certainty. So we can look back historically and see how things were. And so it's hard to reset our brains to expect something different. But I see it as an opportunity to have this blank canvas of creating new expectations, to see that there's no limitations on how things used to be, that we don't need to try to recreate them to be what they once were, but we get to design and create them for what we want them to be. And to allow there to be this freedom in change versus this limitation in change. Because if you go back to what I said, it's that we have this caveman brain protecting us against other people's judgments. So we want to fix it. And in the attempt to fix it, we're trying to replace what we just lost with probably something very similar because that aligns so well with our expectations, right? We go, that's what it used to be. Back then, people judged me this way. I like the feeling of being judged or my perception of judgment in this way. So I need to figure out a way to get a similar job or into a similar relationship with a similar person. So I get back what I lost. I get back what I perceive as other people's judgments of me being important or significant or worthy, right? So if we take that and we go, no, 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 let's reset, let's erase what once was. And let's look at this current situation of loss of something as a starting over, a recreation, a blank canvas to create something brand new. This reminds me of something from the movie Good Will Hunting. Robin Williams looks at Matt Damon. They're obviously playing characters. And he keeps saying, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And when I use a similar stylistic approach in coaching people is I say, you are not your behavior. You are not your behavior. And what I'm really trying to say is this, how this aligns is you are not your job. You are not your career. You are not your relationship. You are you, right? What should complement you is the job you have. What should complement you is the relationship you're in. But you are not your career. You are not your relationship. And I just want to repeat that like they do in that movie, because it's like that needs to sink in. It's like, no, no, that's not you. You didn't change. You are still you, Ken, despite your relationship. You are still you, Ken, despite your job. But when you see, it's like, no, I get to now recreate, not recreate, create brand new, a blank canvas to create something that can complement me, that can give me what I ultimately want, which is other people's, my perception of their judgment. I can create something even better, to see this as an opportunity versus something that you need to fix and get back what you once had.
There's a ton to unpack in there because there's great stuff. Um, there is that great distinction between having a job and being a job, having a relationship and being the relationship. Because if any of those change, then a part of our being goes with it. That is the problem. And you're right, the greatest reason for conflict, the greatest reason for disappointment are unfulfilled or unmet expectations. And the biggest reason for unfulfilled or unmet expectations, a lack of communication at the outset, a lack of real understanding and of setting those things appropriately. And if you're with somebody else, mutually setting expectations so that you're running on parallel tracks that are never ever going to cross, and wondering why you feel distant from someone or from something. I think the other thing that really stood out at me is that you have an opportunity to recreate a job, you have an opportunity to recreate a relationship, but you also had the opportunity to get really clear on the fact that you are the immutable thing through all of this. You're the thing that is constant. You're the thing that counts through all of this. And your worth and your value are not dependent upon having the relationship, and they're not dependent upon having a particular job. I like the term that you use. Those things complement you. Those things can enhance the experience that you're having in life, but they aren't who you are, and they aren't necessary for you to be whole and complete. And that's the piece that I think is missing as we grow and develop over time, because the emphasis is on your job. I mean, going to a cocktail party, what's the first thing out of someone's mouth? What do you do? And immediately the judgment starts in. I do this. Oh, impressed. I do that. Ah, moderately impressed. I do this. Not impressed, right? The judgments start at the outset. And so we set ourselves up as a society to be judging each other on things that really have very little to do with who we are as human beings. And I think the opportunity in coaching work, the opportunity in any kind of counseling work, is to help somebody come back to who they really are, to their core, to their center, and build out from there. Because if you've got that, if you've got that foundation, then you can build whatever job you want on it. Then you can build whatever relationship you want on it. And it's going to stand a much better chance of succeeding because you've built something that's going to be solid.
We've all heard this, and I love it. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And we've all seen this in movies. And if you've done any sort of coaching or counseling for individuals or even companies in consulting, you're going to see them struggling with this concept. It's like, wait, so you told me that story and you told me the result. And then you told me another story and you told me the result. Do you see a pattern or a theme going on here? It's like, yes. So what are you going to do different? Wait, why am I going to do something different? Because if you keep doing the same thing, why would you expect it to be different? So go along with what I'm trying to say here is that how would we expect things to ever get better if we can look at a pattern of our life and see the common denominator is you, right? We talked about these things complement you. So if you have a significant loss of a job, relationship, we're using those two examples here, and you make no adjustments or changes, then why should you expect this to be any different than the last time around? You lost that one. Don't you think if I'm going to predict you'll lose this one too? You'll lose this relationship. You'll lose that job, just like you lost the one that we're talking about if you don't make a change. So to see this as an opportunity to change is huge. It's really important that not only do you say, listen, opportunity to change, it's like change is necessary if you expect anything to be different or anything to be better.
That could be a challenge with people, how people hear the term recreate, because I hear it and I think create anew. I think create afresh. I think create in a forward looking motion. I think for some people, though, when they hear recreate, they think to the past. They think to the way it was. They think about building back what those happy memories were before things went south. And it could be too that a relationship ended because the spouse died. I mean, it may not be that a relationship went south. It may have been a really good relationship. It may have been a great job that the company downsized. There was nothing that you did in and of yourself that changed or shifted anything. You were doing the very best you could. And so I really want people to hear that the notion of recreation, the notion of creating again, is that thing that you're talking about, Dan, that future look. What can you do to make things new? What can you do to build a new future looking forward? The past is valuable in that it is instructive. The past is valuable in that it gives us an opportunity to look at what worked and what didn't and why, and to gain information from that. But at that point, its value is over. Once we've gained that information, that's it. It is just there to instruct us as we look ahead to the future.
And speaking of looking to the past, I encourage every person listening to this to spend some time in reflection on what just happened. You have a significant loss. Let's get clear on what just happened so we don't become that definition of insanity with spending no time adjusting, right? The only way you can make anew, right? I'm not saying like we necessarily, it's like we want to create, not recreate. We want to create brand new. It doesn't have to be brand new, but like we want to create better. We want to create better. And to create better, we have to know what caused the first thing to go wrong in the first place. We just had a significant loss. There's got to be a reason for it. And the common denominator is you. So you have to look not just at blaming the other people in this equation, the other person in the relationship, or the job that you just lost, the company. I really think it's important that you spend time reflecting on yourself, because it's all about personal responsibility, because who's going to still be there at the next job? Who's going to still be there at the next relationship? You. So it did you no good to spend time looking at the other person or looking at the company. Almost no good, because unless you're going to go right back to that old company or right back to that old relationship, you're the person that's going to go to that new one. So you need to spend time taking reflection on what you brought to it, what you did in that situation, to make sure you're not recreating the exact same environment that led to the loss in the first place. So spend time in reflection of your personal responsibility so you can recreate or create even better.
So I agree with you. And I also want to make sure that we keep present to people who have experienced loss. And that loss may have come, like I said earlier, through no fault of their own. If a spouse died, there's an opportunity to look back and to see the best parts of the relationship, so that when you're creating something as you look forward, you have an opportunity to take the best of what was and then to build something new and something even better. And likewise with a job, we have to look at ourselves. With a life unexamined, it's just not worth living. We have to examine ourselves. If a company went under, there's an opportunity to examine, was that a good choice to start out with this particular company? Was there an opportunity to have seen something happening earlier on in the process? There's a lot to be gained by that kind of reflection. And then to think about what you want to create in the future that's going to be new. I think that it's easy to want to blame. I agree with you there, Dan. It is easy if you've gone through something where there's been a breakup or there's been a loss of job, just to stay with those examples. It is easy to blame, because if you feel like you've been done wrong, and you very well may have been, if you feel like you've been done wrong, it's easy to want to blame. But blame is never going to serve. It will just never advance your cause. There's nothing in it that will win for you. There's just nothing there. There's an opportunity to forgive, and there's an opportunity to move forward, The faster you can get to that place, the faster that you can allow the past to reside where it belongs, in the past, that is the same degree by which you're going to be able to create a new future for yourself. And so learn from the past, acknowledge what happened, examine the past, look for ways that you can be better in the future. But then forgive where necessary, forgive yourself where necessary, and close the door. Allow the past to reside where it belongs. And that is as an occurrence that is no more. You only have this moment now to create what you want in the future.
Listen to this. Nobody cares. Nobody's watching. Nobody's comparing. Wait, what? Nobody cares? No, seriously. Nobody cares, like, except for they care about your general well being, right? Like, nobody, hopefully, within reason, wants anything but for you to be healthy and happy. But nobody cares about the details of your life. They really don't. Even in that cocktail party example where they ask you what you do for a living, they don't really care. If they cared, it's for a split second. I always give the example of a Ferrari. If you bought a new Ferrari and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and you pulled up to that cocktail party and people happen to be outside because they're all walking into the party, they care for that split second of like, oh my goodness, look at that car. That's an impressive car. And then they forgot about your car and they went on with their life. So when you really think about it, nobody cares beyond obviously they care for your well-being, right? Nobody's really comparing. In that moment, they're like, that car's way better than my car, right? But as they move on with their life, they're not really sitting there thinking about you and comparing your car to their car. They just go on driving their car around, right? And nobody's looking, watching out. Like nobody's like checking up on you or watching to see how your life's progressing. It just happens to be circumstantial that they come across you at the cocktail party and they ask that polite question of, how are you doing, Ken? How's your job? What are you up to? What are you doing? Right? Or they happen to see you drive up in that Ferrari. Nobody cares. Nobody's comparing and nobody's watching. That is the most freeing thing. What it frees you up to know is that, well, one, I'm right. And two, if that's true and I'm right, then I get to choose stuff to put on this blank canvas that's available to me, whatever I want to create. I can literally start anew. I don't have to hold on to what it once was or try to recreate something, a version of what it once was. I literally can start from scratch. That blank canvas says I can start from scratch because I'm not trying to impress or make people tell me or my perception that they're judging me, because they're really not. They don't care as long as your well-being is good. They're not comparing what you're going to create on this blank canvas to what they have in their life. And they're not checking up on you or watching you, right? So do it for yourself. On this blank canvas, create whatever you want this new opportunity to be for yourself, this new relationship to be. Design it, create it. The only limit on it is what the limit that you place on it. And most of the time, our limits are placed by the fact that we think people care, they're comparing, and they're watching. Let me tell you, they're not. So create whatever masterpiece you want to create.
Yeah, I am 100% with you on that one, and I think it is a tough order, right? Because we are constantly being surrounded in advertisements, in commentary, in the way that we've been raised. Most of us, I'll say, maybe not in our specific families, but how we've been raised up as a society to think that those things matter. And that's where I think the challenge is, to be able to take the words that you were talking about, Dan, and to put those into practice, to actually be able to say, those are ads. That's not a comparison to my life. That's a car. It's an automobile. It's not a measure of the kind of man or the kind of human being that I am. That's all it is. It's a nice car. And leave it be at that. That's a tough one, though, for a lot of people that I talk with to get to, because it means unlearning a lot of stuff. And it means really letting go of the self-imposed judgments. And I agree with you 100%. This stuff is self-imposed. We put it all on ourselves, but we do it as a consequence of what's happening around us. And that's where I see the big challenge, particularly at this time of year when we're surrounded by idealized images of the way, quote, it should be, or the way it's meant to be, or that that's the goal or the pinnacle, the thing that we're aspiring to. And yet we know, I mean, if we're to be like truly honest with ourselves, we know that that's not life. Life is not a Hallmark movie. It just isn't. It has great highs and it has sometimes great lows, but that's what makes life life. And once we can get that, then I think, to your point, we can create something new and fresh that's uniquely ours and not based in what we've come to believe might be the ideal.
And the reason that Ken and I do this podcast is obviously to try to provide you with a lot of value for your life and for your business, and to come at it from our own unique perspective. So I feel like there was a lot of value in this podcast right here. So I encourage you, if you've had a loss, right? And we give them two main examples of a job or relationship. It could be anything. You could have lost a big contract in your job. You could have lost anything. And how significant it is meaningful to you, right? It could be other people's judgment of minor, or it could be major. But in either case, if you've had a loss and you're struggling to overcome or deal with that loss of whatever that was for you, I encourage you, go back, re-listen to this, rewatch it if you're watching the video, and pull out the parts that resonate with you, because there's a lot here. And I think like the overarching thing is to try to flip it from what it seems like it is in its face value, a loss, and see it as a gain of opportunity, a gain of something that could be new, and something that could be something you may have never even gone down that path before because there was such comfort in what was. And even if it was out of your control, which usually this is, it's now like, wow, what an opportunity for something you may have never explored because you're so comfortable in what you once had. But now what you once had is gone. And now you have an opportunity to say, new choice. How fast can something change? We talked about it in the last podcast. In an instant. In an instant, you can make a new decision, go down a new path. So if you see this as an opportunity, please create an amazing life. Create something anew that could be way better than the thing that you once lost.
I want to add one point that just came to me as you were talking, Dan. And I think there's another opportunity here. And that is when you see somebody hurting, when you see somebody who suffered some kind of a loss, there's an opportunity to be there as support for them. I remember years and years ago when I was training to get my private pilot's license, I had a couple of different instructors, and one of the guys, literally the best pilot I've ever flown with, the best instructor, the best teacher, the most competent. He was extraordinary. And one day I wasn't with him, but he was taxiing out in this plane. He got to the area, just getting ready to do the engine run up before he was going to move on to the runway and take off. And he reached for the flaps to adjust them, the electric flaps, and he grabbed the landing gear switch and retracted the gear. And the nose wheel retracted, the front of the plane flopped down, and the propeller was destroyed. That's an expensive piece of equipment. They had to tow the plane back in. He was just horrified at what had happened. And you could tell he was feeling judged, even though people were like, it's an accident. It happened. He was really feeling judged. I've never seen him look so down. I wrote him a letter and dropped it in his mailbox at work. And the next day, all he said to me was, "Thank you. It made a difference," and walked away. And I would just encourage people, if you know somebody who's going through something, they've lost something, they've lost someone, you have an opportunity there to just affirm them. That could be the thing that they need to really get, that they're not their job, they're not their relationship, they're not that contract that they were working on. They are who they are. And to reaffirm their goodness as a human being could be one of the greatest gifts that you could give them.